Ladies and gentlemen, it's absolutely wonderful to be here today. You'll probably be able to detect from my accent that I spent much of my childhood growing up in Africa. And one of the things which I love about Africa, one of the many things which I love about Africa, is that Africans, they love to tell stories. And if you think about it, that's how we have communicated since the beginning of time. That's how we have connected since the beginning of time, is by telling stories. And so what I want to do today is I want to tell you three short stories. Three short stories from three places which I know very, very well and which I think are going to have a very big impact on every single person in this room. So, would you come with me now, because I want to take you to the first place. I want to take you high up into the Arctic to a place called Spitsbergen. Now, Spitsbergen is on the edge of the Arctic sea ice. It's in the Norwegian Arctic. Back in 2005, I went to the Norwegian Arctic to undertake my first very, very cold long-distance swim. In 2005, the water temperature there was 3 degrees centigrade. I went back there last year, and the water was no longer 3 degrees centigrade. The water was now 10 degrees centigrade. So the water had gone from 3 degrees to 10 degrees in just 12 years. And what scientists are telling us now is very, very clear. What they are saying is that within the next 12 years, they're expecting there to be very little sea ice left in the Arctic in the summer months. So if you are a child entering school right now, when you leave school in 12 years' time, you're going to be entering a world which is very, very different to the world in which you started your schooling right now. What is happening in the Arctic, what is happening to the north of us, is going to be impacting every single person on this planet, every single future generation, and the whole of the animal kingdom. Let me take you now from the Arctic all the way down to the bottom of the world, down to Antarctica. On the edge of Antarctica is an incredible group of islands. It's called South Sandwich Islands, and when you arrive there, it's like you have arrived literally into a polar garden of Eden. Over all the beaches are these amazing penguins, thousands and thousands of penguins. In the water, these whales coming up out of the sea and gorging krill. And you'll also see these enormous great elephant seals, some of them as big as 3 tons, coming out of the water, lumbering out of the water in order to fight, in order to mate. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a reason why Sir David Attenborough covered the South Sandwich Islands with so much detail in Blue Planet 2. And the reason is because these islands are unique and they are very, very precious. Let me leave the South Sandwich Islands and let me come back here to the United Kingdom, back here to the English Channel. So I've just done this swim from from Land's End all the way to Dover. It was an enormous swim. It took me 49 days. It was the toughest swim I've ever done in my whole life. I started at Land's End, and then I swam from Land's End all the way along the Cornish beaches, then to Plymouth, where I grew up as a young boy, across Lyme Bay, around the bottom of the Isle of Wight, past the Seven Sisters, around Dungeness, and then finally, the Seven Sisters, and then finally, the White Cliffs of Dover. It took me 49 days. And what struck me about this swim was 2 things. The first thing that struck me was just how incredibly beautiful the coastline is here in the United Kingdom. It's incredibly beautiful. But the second thing that struck me was how little wildlife I saw. I saw so many jellyfish. I mean, they're a function of the fact now that our waters are warming, and also the fact that there now is so much overfishing, so their numbers are blooming. I had the jellyfish sting me in the face, underneath the armpits, in the groin, absolutely everywhere, okay? But the other thing was that I just saw a few birds. I saw a few dolphins in Lyme Bay. I saw one turtle of Portland and very little else. And that was in 49 days. And every beach I went to, every single beach, I just saw this plastic everywhere. It's like we've hoovered up the fish and we've thrown in the plastic. And that is why it is so exciting that the announcement that the United Kingdom made last week. Now, there was a lot of stuff happening last week, so you may have missed it, but the United Kingdom made this announcement that they are calling on all nations in the world, all nations, to come together now to protect at least 30% of our oceans now, to protect it by 2030. This is a huge breakthrough. I've come here today to thank you very, very much. But there's a rub to this, and that is that you also have to get your own house in order. It will be impossible for the United Kingdom to lead on ocean conservation, which I think it should do, but it'll be impossible to do it unless you also have your own home in order. Around the United Kingdom, in the waters around the United Kingdom, you have only fully protected just 7 square kilometers. I mean, just think about it. I mean, it's shocking. Only 7 square kilometers of the waters around the United Kingdom are fully protected. Let me just give you an example of how this plays out. At the end of the English Channel is an incredible, iconic landmark. It's called Goodwin Sands. And on Goodwin Sands, this is where all the seals come up. This is a place where there are endangered eels and lots of birds. And so your government has set this area aside now as a new potential, what you call a marine conservation zone. But at the same time, you've also got plans to allow the Dover Harbour Board to come along and to dredge this area to get aggregate and sand in order for them to build their new harbour development. So on the one hand, you want to protect this place, you want to build this incredible marine conservation zone, and yet on the other hand, you want to dig it up. Protection must mean protection. And the same goes for your overseas territories. I talked about the South Sandwich Islands, which are just so very, very amazing. They are incredible places. They are one of the most important biodiversity hotspots on the entire planet. And yet less than 2% of the South Sandwich Islands and the neighboring South Georgia are actually fully protected. 2%. I urge you to fully protect the South Sandwich Islands with just one stroke of the pen. These islands are under British jurisdiction. With just one stroke of the pen, you could create a protected area right now which is double the size of the United Kingdom. Please, you have to stop thinking that you can sustainably harvest an area, that you can sustainably manage an area, and at the same time you can also protect it. You can't. Britain, I urge you to set this area aside. This should be your gift to the world. I now want to end off by bringing this story back here to this room, to this conference center, to you here in Birmingham. What are all these stories about? Ladies and gentlemen, it is very, very clear to me that we have now entered the era of big consequences. Our environment is changing very, very quickly. Our environment now is right on the edge. Desmond Tutu, a man who I love so very much, he always used to say that many of the conflicts around the world are simply conflicts over limited resources. When we damage our environment, we create conditions which are ripe for conflict. But when we protect our environment, we actually foster peace. So many people come up to me and they say, well, what can I as one person do to try and save the environment? Well, it's very, very clear that not one person can fix the environment. Not one political party can fix the environment. And not one country can fix the environment. The only way we're going to be able to solve this problem is if all of us work together. The only way we're going to be able to solve this problem is if we are all talking to each other. The only way we're going to be able to solve this problem is if we all build bridges. I urge you to do this. This can be our generation's legacy. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all very, very much.